Happy New Year to you. I'm happy to report to you that Keir Starmer is just as unpopular in 2025 as he was in 2024. So in some ways, that's good news for him. It hasn't got any worse.
It hasn't. And, he did run into a spot of trouble in Madeira on his holidays, getting booed. I mean, you would have thought he'd learnt by now not to act privileged, but to queue jump on a popular toboggan ride in Madeira. That was a foolish idea.
It wasn't right, was it? I mean, and again, you just find yourself asking the question, you know, why did he think that was a good idea? As somebody pointed out to me on Twitter over the last couple of days, only Keir Starmer would want to go on a tobogganing holiday and find himself in Madeira, because obviously most tobogganing takes place in the snow.
It does. For me, it does raise the question of, you know, why holidays in Madeira are so boring that people will queue for 3 hours to run down a trolley.
I know.
On a hill.
It must. Yeah, I've never been to Madeira, and it must be. Apart from knowing that Ronaldo comes from there, I think that's about all I need to know, really. But you know, also, wouldn't it have been sensible for him to not go somewhere where it's going to be warmer than here, when, you know, pensioners are going to be sitting around wondering whether they can turn the heating up as it turns to sort of -5? It might have been better for him to have been in Scotland or somewhere.
Well, to go somewhere cold on holiday on purpose.
Well, people do. I mean, you know, David Cameron went to Cornwall. Do you remember when he could have gone almost anywhere in the world, but he went to Cornwall because he knew that if he went somewhere expensive where he would normally go with his family, he would be criticised. So he was smart enough not to do it.
Well, I think he then sneaked off a few weeks later to somewhere a bit warmer abroad. But no, the Prime Minister's entitled to a holiday. He hasn't had a holiday since.
But he's been away so much. He might have wanted to spend a holiday at home with his family, where he says he likes to spend most of his time. Whereas he's been away, you know, on 18 different trips in 6 months. That's 3 trips a month.
Well, quite. I mean, I don't like foreign travel personally, so I would much rather have a holiday at home. But it's up to him. I mean, if he wants a break in the sun, then he should have one. I mean, I think.
When's he back?
This puritanism about politicians actually having a break and a rest so that they can make good decisions, I think is absurd.
Yeah, but he's not having a rest, is he? Because he keeps tweeting. He sent out his New Year's message, which was clearly pre-recorded. He hasn't deputised Angela Rayner to be in charge of the country in the same way that John Prescott was deputised when Tony Blair would go away. So he's actually not having a rest. So presumably he's not really on holiday.
Well, you can't have it both ways, Mike. Either you're complaining that he's going on holiday too much, or you're saying he's not going on holiday.
I'm not complaining at all. I'm not complaining, John.
Let him manage his time as best he can. I think it's a good thing for him to get a break, and I hope he has a restful. He has had a restful time, because I think he's coming back today, isn't he?
Is he? Well, I'm just going to ask you. I mean, you're the expert. I presume he will be coming back because Parliament's reopening on Monday. So you'd think he might want to settle in and put his feet under the table, move a few more portraits out of Downing Street, you know, before the new year starts properly. But no, I'm not complaining about him going on holiday. I'm suggesting that it's not a great look to go to a warmer country when you've just taken the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners who are worried about freezing to death. You know, I just think it might be wiser to go on a skiing holiday or go somewhere where it's cold. That's all.
If you follow the logic of that, Mike, you'd be saying that no senior politician should ever go on holiday anywhere.
That's not true.
They certainly shouldn't go on a private jet. I mean, that would be...
Well, he shouldn't go on a private jet. No, and I don't believe he did go on a private jet. I'll tell you what else politicians shouldn't do. They shouldn't charge us council tax for their second homes. But unfortunately, it would appear that there are 41 Labour ministers who are doing that, including Rachel Reeves, including Angela Rayner, including Liz Kendall, and including Ed Miliband and Joe Stevens. Several other names.
These are MPs who represent constituencies outside London. Have to maintain a second home. Yeah. What's your problem with that?
My problem is that, you know, lots of people have to maintain homes and lots of people have to pay council tax.
Lots of people have to maintain... poor people who have to maintain second homes.
Lots of people have to pay council tax, right? I don't think that well-off MPs, particularly those who are asking everybody else to make sacrifices, should be claiming council tax from the public purse when they don't need to.
What do you mean they don't need to? They need to have a second home.
Well, they don't need to have a second home. They've chosen. They've chosen to have a second home, which we have rather generously helped them to finance by one way or another. And I think that it would be a nice gesture, would it not, for people who continually tell us to tighten our belts, that they would also tighten their own instead of taking a load of freebies out of us. You're going to tell me? So you're going to tell me that Bridget Phillipson claiming £13,400 for her council tax is not a story?
No, I don't think it is. No. I think
good to see nothing's changed.
have to maintain a home in their constituency and a place to live in London. And I think
they don't have to. No, that's not true. They don't have to do that. They could
if they
do
didn't
something
do
else.
that, then you would complain that they never visited their constituencies.
That's not true.
Back in the 1950s,
that's not true either.
Just sat in London.
That's also not true. You know very well, John, that there are plenty of MPs who have homes in places like Essex, and just to show how balanced I am, one of them's James Cleverly, which is easily reachable to Westminster by a short train ride, who also has a home in London, which we pay for. I don't think that's right. I think it's taking the mickey, and I think most people who listen and watch this show would agree with me.
Well, of course they would, because it's an easy hit, isn't it? I mean...
Well, you can't have it both ways either, John. You know, if you live in Northumberland, I might accept that you have to have a second home. Not if you live in Braintree.
Well, yeah, it's still quite a long way out of London, isn't it? I mean, if you've got late votes in Parliament, which happens, and, you know, maybe...
So
maybe
spend a night in a hotel and charge that. You can do that.
Yep. Well, you can do that, and it probably cost about the same as maintaining a place in central London.
No, it wouldn't, John, and you know that to be true. But anyway, we'll move on from that. Let's talk about this grooming gang scenario, because we've now got Jess Phillips, who spent an awful lot of her time last year, before she was a minister, saying that something had to be done. Now she doesn't want to do anything.
No. She says now we don't want to hold yet another public inquiry.
No, that's not what she said, actually. No, she says that she doesn't want to order one, but she thinks that Oldham should make up their mind. So she's quite happy for them to have another public inquiry. She just doesn't want to order one.
No, well, it's up to Oldham if they want to do an inquiry into their specific issues in their local area.
Well, that's what she's being asked to do.
There was an inquiry that reported 2 years ago on the national problem of child sex exploitation.
Yeah, but not in Oldham.
Chaired by Professor Alexis Jay. Plenty of recommendations, not very good ones in my view. You know, things like a public information campaign and better guidelines and all the rest of it, which by the way, I think indicates that you know, public inquiries are not the answer to everything.
Well, they're the answer to everything when you want them to be, though, aren't they? I mean, you thought the Chilcot inquiry was worth having.
No, I didn't. No, I thought I'm generally against public inquiries. I think the inquiry into the COVID, the handling of the COVID pandemic, has been a terrible waste of money.
Of course.
I'm not in favour of public inquiries. I'm in favour of doing things.
But you can have inquiries about things which are specifically able to be addressed. You know, the COVID inquiry isn't about anything. There's no point in having an inquiry into something called COVID because you don't know what you're doing with it. However, if you're but hang on. If you're having an inquiry into something specific that happened in a specific place and was the responsibility of specific people, that's an inquiry worth having, and it can have it in Oldham.
Well, yeah, the Oldham Council can have one.
Well, no, you can't have the Oldham Council investigating themselves. That would be wrong.
Nothing stopping them.
No, but you don't. Yeah, but that's like saying you should have, you know, the government investigating their own government. That's not how it works.
Okay, well, if there are specific allegations to be made, then let's.
Well, there are lots of specific allegations to be made by people about the police, which have been made for years, by people about local councillors, by local politicians. Gordon Brown himself issued a statement saying that, you know, nobody should be prosecuted in these cases because he thought it might be creating Islamophobia. You know, there's all sorts of things we could be looking into.
No, this is just stirring it, Mike. I mean, this is.
It's not stirring it at all. No, it's just.
No. What I know what I mean. You're not doing this, I'm sure. I'm sure you want to get at the truth and all that.
But I do.
Elon Musk and others are seizing on this demand for a public inquiry in order to suggest that there's some kind of secret conspiracy going on. And as soon as you get into that kind of territory, especially when you've got issues of child sexual abuse involved, people become very, very worked up about it, and surely it would be better though. Some terrible cover-up going on.
Yeah, but surely
there has already been a public inquiry, a national public inquiry. It reported 2 years ago. These people deliberately ignore that. They refuse to pay any attention to it. They haven't read it. They don't even know what the recommendations were, and yet they want to insinuate that there's some kind of terrible plot going on, that dreadful things are happening, and dreadful things have happened.
And dreadful things did happen, yeah. and nobody was held, and nobody, John. But hang on, nobody was held.
Addressed.
No, but nobody was held responsible for them, and that's what people are getting worked up about.
Lots of people. I don't know if you've seen the reporting.
Yes, I have seen the reporting. You have to let me speak occasionally, John.
Hundreds of people have gone to jail.
Yes, they have. I'm not talking about people who were the perpetrators. I'm talking about the people who covered it up. They haven't been investigated properly, and that is the point. Keir Starmer admitted himself that the CPS let people down under his own watch. He's admitted that.
Because he did.
But hang on.
He was doing something about it.
But hang on.
He
changed things. But John, the question that
didn't
people
need a public inquiry.
No, but the question that people want answered is why there were no cover-ups investigated, why the councillors who were covering it up were not investigated, and why nobody...
They were investigated.
No, they were not. Nobody from any walk of life other than the perpetrators themselves have done any prison time whatsoever. There's been no prosecutions of police. There's been no prosecutions of people who actively obstructed the prosecution of guilty people who were later found guilty. And surely, if you want to prove that there is no cover-up going on, you make sure that there's an inquiry that proves there isn't one.
This is the absolute classic conspiracy theory.
No, it's not.
You know, you've got to prove the negative.
No.
Otherwise, people are going to continue to assert that there's been a cover-up.
I'm not suggesting that.
You don't know.
There has been a cover-up. There has. There's no question. No, John, there's no question there was a cover-up. Everybody says it,
Why
right?
is there no question? Well, in that case, you don't need a public inquiry.
Well, no, because you can have
you obviously know the fact.
Well, no, the point is that there are differences between knowing that there was a cover-up and knowing who was responsible. I would have thought, in your case, you would want to make sure that the people responsible were the ones held responsible, as opposed to just anyone that happens to be being named by Elon Musk.
No, I want to see people who are responsible for these terrible crimes being put behind bars.
Right. And what about the people who covered them up?
Hundreds of them have been.
But what about the police who failed to prosecute or to charge anyone?
Well, yeah, but these are very difficult issues, Mike. And
Yeah,
there's no use simply saying, "Oh, there's been a cover-up."
Well, there has been.
Is there were failings. There was a specific problem that there was a culture of not believing children when they made these allegations, because it was assumed that they were making it up. All those things have been dealt with and addressed, and they are no longer. Children are no longer regarded as unreliable witnesses in these kind of cases, and the procedures have been tightened up, and lots of people, as I say, have gone to jail, and they are still being investigated.
Well, here's what Kerry Badenoch says, right? The time is long overdue for a full national inquiry into the rape gang scandal. Trials have taken place all over the country in recent years, but no one in authority has joined the dots. That's what she says. Now, are you going to call her? Are you going to call her a conspiracy? Hang on. Are you calling her a conspiracy theorist then, John?
Yes. Joining the dots is. I mean, I'm sorry. That is. You know, she's again implying that there's some kind of mysterious.
Because there was a cover-up.
No. This is conspiratorial thinking, and it's unhelpful. It's undemocratic, and it doesn't help get to the heart.
Well, here's what a report said in 2022. The report says that children were being abused in the most degrading and destructive ways
that's the national inquiry that Kerry Badenoch is calling for.
Hang on. Amid extensive failures by local authorities and police forces. Yes, extensive failures. Well, that's a cover-up, isn't it?
That is the public inquiry that Kerry Badenoch is calling for. It happened 2 years ago. It has reported.
But the point is, John, nobody has been prosecuted as a result of those extensive failures. And when we talk about the post office scandal, when we talk about hospital scandals, when we talk about, baby scandals, maternity unit scandals, quite often people get prosecuted. Nobody in this situation has been prosecuted. That's all I'm saying. That means there's been a cover-up.
No, it does not. It may mean that.
Well, why do you think nobody's been prosecuted? Why do you think nobody's been prosecuted then?
Well, because I don't think these are necessarily prosecutable failures. These are failures of systems, failures of assumptions over the years.
So you're just assuming everything's fine then? So you're just assuming
that? Of course everything's not fine, and these are very serious.
Well, don't you think there should be an inquiry to discover why they're not fine?
Well, because there has been an inquiry, Mike. It reported 2 years ago, and people.
But nothing happened, though.
Deliberately ignoring its findings.
But nothing happened.
Well, this is the problem with public inquiries, isn't it? I mean, sometimes these issues.
So, on the one hand, you don't think we should have public inquiries, but on the other hand, in this case, we shouldn't have one because we've already had one, even though nothing actually came of it.
I'm not generally in favour of public inquiries. I'm in favour of people dealing with problems as as Keir Starmer dealt with problems when he was at the CPS, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he changed the way it worked. They went back and actually looked at some cases where they'd failed to prosecute in the past. They changed. They
but they still haven't.
Nobody's been. More people went to jail.
But people went to jail who were group members of the gangs. People didn't go.
Yeah, that's what we want to see.
Yes, we do, but we also want to see that the reason which allowed that to happen also being prosecuted as well. And, the year after your report came out in 2022, a report on child sexual exploitation in Rotherham found there was a perceived message from council leaders to downplay the ethnicity of those attackers, right? Now, that to me seems worthy of a proper inquiry and some proper charges. Surely.
No, that was a proper inquiry. Well, why charges for downplaying ethnicity?
Yeah,
I think that's a bad thing.
Well, hang on.
Shouldn't have happened. I don't think that anybody who does anything that slightly falls short of the best standards in public life should go to jail. I think the people who should go to jail are people who commit these terrible crimes.
Yeah, but by virtue of protecting those people who didn't go to jail
I don't think they were
time,
protected. No,
yes, they were.
You're getting into the different sort of language.
They were.
No, they were not protected.
Yes, they were. They were not prosecuted for a very long time.
Police failed to act.
No,
a lot of
the
police failed to act on information.
So you don't think that's a problem?
That's not protection.
So you don't think that's protection? You don't think that's a problem?
No. Of course it's a problem, and it's been dealt with.
No, it hasn't.
Or it is being dealt with. I mean, it hasn't been dealt with perfectly.
No, it hasn't been dealt with. That's the problem.
But the answer to that is not to have another public inquiry. It is to get on with sorting out the problems.
So what do you think should happen now then, after the inquiry's results came out in 2022? Because clearly nothing's happened. It's now 3 years later. Nobody's done anything.
What do you mean nothing's happened? Lots of people are still going to jail, being prosecuted.
Yes,
these cases are being
you're
investigated.
missing my point, John.
I think all that should be
you're deliberately missing my point. I'm not arguing about the perpetrators. I'm arguing about those who covered up for them.
Well, I don't believe that they did. So,
according to,
I don't think that's a problem for me. I think you have to.
Well, no. If a report says,
I would prefer your solutions not to be just to call for a public inquiry, because that is just wishful.
I would not ask for a public inquiry if the first public inquiry had any effect. But the reason why you need another one is because the last one had no effect. If council leaders are downplaying the guilt of individuals because of their ethnicity, then that, to me, is obstruction of justice. Hang on. It's obstruction of justice, and it's also tantamount to aiding and abetting a crime. That's what I would call it.
No, I don't think that's happening anymore. So
no, it's not happening anymore, but nobody has gone to prison for it, is my point.
Well, I don't think people should go to prison.
So for aiding and abetting crime, you shouldn't go to prison. For obstruction of justice, you shouldn't go to prison.
Well, of course you should, in serious cases, yes.
Well, this is a serious case, isn't it?
Well, no, produce some evidence of a specific case.
There's a report that says it.
Yeah, no, the specific cases we need.
Well, I can bring you that if you want. We haven't got time to do it right here.
No,
John,
quite.
You know, I'm afraid in this case, saying it's not a story isn't going to wash.
I'm not saying it's not a story. It's a very
thank God for that.
It's a very serious problem, and I'm glad that the CPS tightened up its procedures and went back and reinvestigated some of these cases, and that more people went to jail for these terrible crimes.